day, and welcome to another Ransford's Weekly Wraps. This one will be different from our normal wraps. We're going to have a post-US election kind of special episode, let me say that. We will discuss the outcome of the US election, what it means for the US markets, for South Africa, and for places around the world, including Europe and China. So, for those that have been living under a rock, Donald Trump has won the US election. And not only did he win the US election, but the Republicans have gained control of the Senate and have like a 90+% chance of getting control of the US Congress as well. So this is the trifecta. The way the US works is that laws percolate from the Congress to the Senate to the presidency. So the law goes kind of created in the Congress, goes to the Senate, and then goes to the president and kind of signs it off. The president has some powers. The power to appoint people, the power to have executive orders, which can be quite powerful in some cases. I mean, there's three branches of the government. There is the executive, there's the legislative, and there's the judicial. The executive is the presidency. The legislative is the Congress and Senate, and then we have the judicial, which is the court system. But the president also has control of parts of the court system, especially the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land. By controlling the Congress, the Senate, and the presidency, the president kind of has a lot of power in that system. Another thing to note is that the wins in the Senate are reasonably strong. We're looking at about 53 votes, 53 out of 100 seats for the Republicans. That gives them not just that margin, about 50, it actually gives them 4, because what happens is in the US, if there's a 50-50 split, the vice president steps in and basically is able to be the tying vote. So 3 people could basically, defect for the Republicans, and it wouldn't be a 50-50, event. It would be rather a 50-50 with a tiebreaker going to the Republicans event. And so let me just explain to you why different parts are important. You control the Congress, you control the Senate, you control the presidency. Even if you don't have the supermajorities that would be required to do things like amend the Constitution or something, the Republicans can control spending, they can control appointments, they control just the budget of the government without any input from the Democrats. The most the Democrats could do is what's called filibuster. Filibuster is basically when you go in and you kind of delay things, kind of put a wrench in the works to stop the system from working, but you can't really generate anything. And being an irritant, like stopping things from working, is the one power parties, minority governments, minority parties in government in the US do have. And so that's one of the things they can do. But one of the things they cannot do, and that can stop things like, for instance, legislation going through, or slow it down at least. But one of the things they can't do is they can't stop appointments. And that's one of the things that President Trump is going to have a lot of power with regards. The US Supreme Court right now is kind of 5-6, let's say, to 3 majority for the Republicans. There's basically these 3 Democrats that are in there. 2 of them are, reasonably young. They could probably survive to, and literally survive physically to another term, another presidential election, let me say. In which case, the hope is that a Democrat wins, and then if one of these people resign or retire, basically you'll get them replaced by a Democrat. But the Republicans had an issue. They have 2 people there that are very old. There's one person in the Democratic side that's about 70, you can make 74. But the Republicans have 2 people that are quite old. And they may make it to the next, election as well. But in all likelihood, what's going to happen is he's going to have a discussion with them to resign early. Alito and Thomas. If they resign early and are replaced by 40, 50-year-old people, which is basically what you do nowadays, you replace them by reasonably young people, because the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. Donald Trump will have appointed half the Supreme Court during his 2 terms, and with people that are quite young and are going to be dominating that court for 20, 30 years. Okay, I don't know if people understand this clearly. There's been some monumental presidents in US history. People like Lincoln, people like FDR, people like Reagan. Donald Trump is one of them. Obama was not. Biden was not. George W. Bush was not. Clinton was not. Okay. Trump is looking to be one of those presidents that, if you ask people to remember presidents' names, everyone remembers like, Lincoln, everyone remembers like Washington. People remember, JFK because of the assassination. Who remembers Hoover? Who remembers Garfield? No, these are names that people don't remember. You remember FDR, but you don't remember like, maybe some other people that came like Truman that came after. Who remembers Carter? What did he do? But they remember Reagan much more, because of the things that he did and how he changed the way the US operates. Trump is going to have that effect, if only via the Supreme Court. The second thing he's going to do is he's going to change how agencies work. He's coming in with a vendetta against things like the Department of Justice, the CIA, the FBI. There's been a number of things that the agencies have done over the last, say, 8 years that he's taken quite personally. Things like the Hunter Biden laptop, where 51 agents from the intelligence service basically came out and said it was a lie when it wasn't. Things like, for instance, the what's called the Russia hoax, which he thinks he blames on the CIA. These prosecution by Jack Smith, who's, by the way, dropped all those cases that he's going to be out of before Trump even gets into office, by the DOJ. So we are looking to see a lot of changes in some of the institutions that define America in many ways. I mean, the FBI has been there for all our lifetimes. The CIA, the Department of Education has been there for 40 plus years. These are things that may not be there at the end of the Trump term. We may not have an FBI, at least not the way we know it. We may not have a Department of Education in the US, at least the way we know it right now. Massive changes happening there. And these things can happen without Congress, and to some extent without the Senate. But in the Senate, with his 3-vote margin, it's very difficult for any single senator to make a difference there. So you might be one or two senators and say, "Oh, the Department of Education is important," but they've got to get 3 of them together to hold fast, or at least 4 of them together to hold fast against Trump. Because if they're going to get 3, 50-50, his VP makes it the tie-breaking vote. They've got to get 4. They've got to drop his number down to 49. Okay, getting that number of people together against the sitting president is going to be difficult. And so, like I said, a lot of power for Trump, lots of changes coming about, lots of differences going to happen with regards to the different agencies in the US, and then what difference does it make for the world? Well, Trump's biggest impact on the world is probably going to be tariffs. He's talked about this a number of times. He's going to put tariffs on US imports, or imports into the US from different parts of the world, really high ones on China, but tariffs pretty much everywhere. In fact, the proposed tariffs for places like the UK, just look at the UK alone, that difference in terms of the UK's exports could be as large as Brexit or even more. I remember one of the reasons that the UK was looking at Brexit because they thought they had the backing of the US to help them through this year. If Trump comes in with the tariffs he's talking about, the UK could be hit with a blow as large, if not larger, than Brexit. And you know how bad that's been for that country. Europe as well. Major issues with in Europe with regards to exports to the US. China, by far the largest impact. In fact, people are saying that if China was to ride through this Trump period, its stimulus packages have to be significantly larger even than what they've done so far. It's going to be really impactful on the Chinese economy because he's going to put tariffs on China. He's going to be much stronger with regards to exports to China of things like high-tech equipment and so on. And so China is going to face a very tough time. So in terms of the global situation, a global trade war can be quite devastating, especially for smaller countries like South Africa. If the US is engaging in trade policy that's aggressive, we have no power. We have no coalition. Maybe BRICS together might have some kind of power. But other than that, we have no ability to do much against the US. We're just too small. So we're going to have to start making nice. And in fact, we've seen pretty much every major leader, including the Chinese leader, congratulate Donald Trump and talk about how they would have good relationships going forward. And that's obviously the normal stuff. I think with this time around, it's going to have more emphasis because everybody knows that he's coming with a pretty big hammer in terms of trade policy. The next thing is geopolitically. The consensus right now is that we are going to see Ukraine lose out really badly. And I'm honestly like just put my personal feelings there, I feel quite sorry for the Ukrainians. They were led into this war with promises of assistance, which have not even come back. Even those promises have not really materialized, until now, and they're going to disappear when Trump's in power. They are losing huge, amounts of people. The number of people that live in the Ukraine right now, is significantly lower than what lived just before the war. Obviously, people are refugees, but also a lot of people are dead. Lots of people are injured. It's been a disaster for that country. And if the US kind of kind of steps back from support, Europe can't really make it up. The Europeans have, the trick the Europeans used over the last, say, 50 years or so has been, we don't really need to spend money on defense because the US is going to protect us. And so they've taken all that defense money, which is supposed to be a couple percent, maybe more of GDP, and use that to have social welfare net, that's to basically have better healthcare systems and public pensions and so on. If you don't have to worry about paying for your security because your neighbor has a good security system, you could buy a better TV, you can have a better house. But if one of your neighbors says, no, my security is not going to cover you anymore, you become incredibly vulnerable. And that's what the Europe is finding out right now. That if the US steps back, the big powers of Europe are very vulnerable to this powerful Russia on their doorsteps. And so that's another change going to happen. In China, I don't know. I think with the kind of pressure that Trump is going to bring in, it's possible that they might think more carefully about, a possible invasion of Taiwan, which would be a good thing for the world. We really don't want a China-Taiwan flare-up that's going to, really cause problems in the world. And to understand just how problematic it is, the last big global conflict was World War II. Everyone knows World War II. What was World War II? It was Japan, it was Germany, it was Italy, and those were the big three. Okay. In fact, it's really Japan and Germany. In fact, if you look at the total number, it was really Germany. But Japan, Germany, Italy was like the coalition effectively against the West, with some hanger-ons, of course. But that was the coalition against the US, Britain, and Russia. Okay, and Britain was not just Britain. Britain was basically India and Australia and Canada, because that was part of the British Empire. So we're talking about, in terms of population, way larger part of the world. The US alone had a larger population than Germany and Japan combined. The US economy was larger than Germany and Japan combined. The US land area was larger than Germany and Japan combined. And then they also added the British Empire, which had India, Australia, Canada, South Africa, also was helping out there as well. They also had Russia. Russia alone had a bigger population than Germany and Japan, almost. Russia alone had a larger, land area. They were not, economically as powerful, but they were a force of their own. Now, compare that to a fight between basically China, the Russia combined versus the US and Europe. Population-wise, no. This is a bigger population versus its opponents. Land area, bigger land area. GDP, not that far off. In terms of actual manufacturing GDP, you could seriously argue that the ability to make the stuff that matters for wars, like engines and like guns and drones and whatever it is nowadays, that the Chinese have an advantage over the US and the Europeans combined. It's a far more powerful opponent than what it was the US, UK, and the free Europe, etc. faced in World War II. To give you an idea of just how powerful this is. So we really don't want that to happen. And so there's a possibility that the Chinese might be thinking twice, especially if they have to spend more money on stimulus because of the Chinese of the trade war that the US is going to put on them. Then looking at other policies that might affect the world. So the Federal Reserve, and this is quite interesting, Jerome Powell at the Federal Reserve has been a target by Donald Trump for a couple of times, for a couple of reasons. Mainly he's been complaining that they've been cutting interest rates too fast to help Biden, and he thinks they're going to basically turn against him. And in fact, there was a question in a news conference given out by Jerome Powell, where he was asked point blank, if the president asked him to retire or resign, would he? He said no. Does he think the president has the power to ask him to resign? And he said no. So, according to him, he's going to stick around at least until his term ends in a couple of years' time. Now, I don't know if that's going to be a huge impact going forward or not. I personally believe Jerome Powell is not partisan. He's not going to do anything that's going to really hurt Donald Trump, particularly because he wants to have a grudge against him or whatever. So I don't think that is too important, but it does show some tension to the US. What I think is more important is the amount of spending Trump is going to be doing and the amount of tax cuts he's going to be doing. We know that Trump wants to get corporate tax cuts even lower than they are, below 20%. He wants to get marginal tax rates for the wealthy down as well. And here is the wild card. The reason Trump won in part was Elon Musk, who stepped in and probably spent a couple $1 million a day, even beyond the $1 million a day prize he was giving out to register to vote, or according to him, just to sign a petition. He didn't pay you to register to vote because that would be illegal. But he probably spent somewhere in the region of about $150 to $300 million in the period of a couple months to help Donald Trump win. By the way, it turned out to be an incredible investment. Even at $300 million, just the improvement in Tesla's share price on the first day after the election was somewhere in the region of about $15 billion for Elon Musk personally. So if you put $300 billion down and you make $15 billion, that's a 50 times, 50 times, not 50%, 50 times return on your investment. Worth it for Elon Musk. And that's just Tesla. I would suspect it's at least as big a difference for SpaceX, maybe even more, and for other things as well, Neuralink, etc., even for Twitter helping it out. People thought that when he bought Twitter, it was supposed to be this huge, mistake for $44 million loan. They say he's lost about, 75% of the value. It's worth about $10 billion at the moment. That's the valuation. But the first day after that election, which probably Twitter really helped Trump win, more than made up for this perceived loss of 30 plus billion that people talk about. Elon Musk is going to be very powerful in the new regime. He will not have a official place because he can't, because that will require him to let go of his ownership stakes in Tesla and SpaceX, relinquish them because there will be conflict of interest. So he's more going to be an advisor. But he's going to be an advisor that's going to be advising around very specific things around regulation, around things like environmental protection, because he's come up against these kind of issues a number of times in both his companies around labor laws. So Elon Musk is going to be pushing for a lot more deregulation in the bureaucracy that kind of governs a lot of things. Now, it may be bad for workers, but if you were to cut US regulation, that would be a huge incentive for innovation in the US. And speaking of regulation, the final thing I want to talk about is that we're likely to see Lina Khan, who's got the head of the FTC, go. She's been in charge of things like, determining whether mergers go through or not. And she's been basically blocking a lot of mergers. I think with her gone, a lot of companies that are looking to merge or looking to buy things out are going to find it much easier to do so. And so you could find a lot of companies that might be the target of mergers, the mergers were blocked or kind of like discouraged by the government and they fell apart. Those companies are going to be back on the buying block, and people are going to be out there trying to pick up these things that obviously when you buy something you pay a premium. So that's what we have to look at. For more details on all these things, look at my seminar that I gave last week on the election. And in fact, not to my own horn, but virtually every pick was correct. If Trump wins, what you're going to buy is Palantir, Tesla, Bitcoin. Those are my three top picks. Look at what they've done. And I said if Harris wins, it's Boeing, Lockheed, and European manufacturers. And look at how those things have done since she has not won. You've seen either flat or negative on them. So the differential was quite strong. Like I said, look at them for more, that particular webinar for more clarity about what we've just seen right now. Okay, that's it for this week. Next week we return to the normal kind of format. But hope you enjoyed this particular talk. Okay, cheers, guys.